It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello and welcome to Accelerate. I'm excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Justin Christianson, founder and president of Conversion Fanatics. Now, there's this tendency among sales and business development professionals to look at the whole world of online sales as sort of a completely separate discipline from selling, and that how they appeal to the prospects and how they move them through the funnel is really different from a direct sell prospect. But my thought is not really that much different. And my guest today is an industry-leading expert on converting initial buyer interest into an order. So, some people call it online marketing, but it is outright selling. And we're going to talk about the lessons you as a sales rep, whether you're a field rep, an SDR, or an account exec, can learn from conversion experts like Justin to make your selling more effective. So, Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I appreciate it.
So just take a minute, please, and introduce yourself to the audience.
Well, I'm a self-proclaimed numbers junkie, best-selling author on the topic of conversion optimization and testing. And been doing this whole marketing thing for about 13 years, and started our company a couple years ago after some big demand and a lot of interest from a lot of our circle of influence and some people outside of it. And it's just been a wonderful ride since then.
Perfect. And you're based in Austin, Texas.
I am.
All right. So let's sort of jump right into this. That great copy has to do a number of things. When people come to the website, it has to do a number of things the moment people come and arrive on the site. And certainly first impressions are really important in that whole aspect of it. So talk a little bit about that, how you focus on creating these positive first impressions. Because in sales, it's absolutely essential. There's more literature coming out all the time talking about the absolute criticality of creating positive first impressions.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, and it does transfer over to sales too online because, like you said, it's always sales. At the end of the day, it's grabbing the attention, it's building that relationship and trying to do it in a way that's time effective. So there's been studies that have been coming out that in a normal conversation, you have 7 to 8 seconds to capture the attention of somebody and keep it. And online, it's about 3 seconds, and it's only getting worse.
Yeah, well, that's actually, and I talk about in my latest book, because I did research onto this whole idea of sort of what they call precognitive processing of data. That actually, people are forming their first impressions of people within the first quarter of a second. 250 milliseconds.
Yeah, that's key, especially when you're working in the online space too. Is I see so many. I critique so many sites. I've probably critiqued 24 this week already. And you really have to lead with what it is you do and how it's going to benefit your visitors very quickly. And we have found that even in our business development side, that if we tried to go with like a longer pitch or something, more drawn out, we don't get their attention, we don't get the response that we're looking for, and we don't make that impact, and we don't get a chance to actually show exactly what we do and how we can benefit from their company.
So how's that translate into your actual conversation then your outbound sales reps have, and then compared to what's on your website?
It's pretty similar. So we lead very quickly. Our website is more of like get to know us a little bit better, and leading them down a specific path. And then our outbound efforts is all about just creating that instant conversation, getting some kind of conversation started. And then we lead it with value from there.
And so do you start that conversation with a question?
Yeah, a simple yes or no question is what we have been finding to be the most benefit.
Interesting.
Do you have 3 minutes to take a look at something if I send it over? Yes or no?
Yeah, and I have one company I work with. They'd say, do you have 29 seconds? Right? And they use a deliberately odd number because people start curious. Well, what can you tell me in 29 seconds?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we found that 3 minutes seems to be the benefit for us in all of our testing. But that translates to over on online too is you have a very short attention span. You got to grab their attention really quick. So when I go into a testing situation, the first thing I look at is headlines. I've known guys to pay $1,500 just for somebody to write them a 16-word headline because it's that important. We see the most, if you're going to test anything, test your headline because that's going to have the most impact. We've seen up to 128% increases in conversions just by changing the headline.
So what's your headline when you're doing direct selling?
Headline when direct selling, that is just leading in, and I usually find the pain point and then tie it into the benefit very quickly.
So it's really interesting because it speaks to, so getting rid of some of the fluff at the beginning of sales calls, certainly dispensing with that corporate capabilities pitch. As you said, you've got that simple yes/no question, which leads to very quickly making the customer understand exactly what you do so they understand what's in it for them to invest that 3 minutes of time with your sales guy.
Yeah, and it's a lot of effort because we lead with a lot of value. We actually send them a critique. So we'll actually give them some information, some value. It's like, here's a bunch of test ideas for your site that we see on the surface. And that leads to a further conversation. It's like, hey, those are great ideas. And then it opens up a warmer relationship when you finally get on the phone.
Yeah, so you've done that proactively before you even pick up the phone.
Yep. So they're already educated on some of what we do on their own time before we ever pick up the phone.
Yeah, that's a great...
So it leads straight into basically a sales conversation. It's like, okay, what are your further pain points? And then how can we solve that problem? And then they start asking the typical buyer questions and, pricing questions and things like that to where we can actually go in for, the proposal phase, which is our setup.
Yeah, which I think is a great lesson you take from online into the direct selling world is getting to, like I said, the value of what's in it for them very quickly. Mm-hmm. And certainly you do that online. You said you got a great headline. You're really focused on, really the first thing you're trying to do is build some trust, right? I mean, you're going to engage them, but you got to build some trust there.
Yeah, it comes down to, we kind of focus on the main elements online, and we've transferred that over and tested our way to, something that works pretty effectively in our business development side of our company. Is we focus on the headline, the benefits, the call to action, and what they get as a result of that call to action very quickly. And that's pretty much any online situation that can transfer over into a business development side too.
Yeah, and one of the, you have the benefit, I don't say the benefit, it's not a unique benefit, I was going to say, is you have the ability to go and, critique somebody's website, but no matter what product or service you're selling, you can go do similar research about a customer, and maybe it's not their website, but you can do about their business, their markets, their competitors, and be armed on that first call. And this is really one of the real complaints about sales reps we get from customers these days, is that I think the statistic I heard recently is roughly about 80% of executives believe that they get no value from sales calls with salespeople. So that's a crazy stat, and I would agree. I know I get bombarded with sales presentations all the time, and it's the same thing. They're like, "Here's what I do. Look at how great I am." Right, but they just sort of done the equivalent to what you do with doing a critique of the website. But look at people's market, look at their business, look at their company, look at their competitors. At least they'd be armed with something they could demonstrate to the prospect that there's a little value coming here. It's not just me go make a pitch. I've got some insight perhaps into what you're doing, and let's have this conversation. Yeah, when I get on the phone with a prospect, I know everything about them. Typically, I know as much as I can possibly know about them. Do they like playing tennis? Things to that. Anything I can have to get that warm up that relationship and provide the value a little quicker is very beneficial. Yeah, and one of the things also that you talk about, and I want to have sort of an image in mind for sales reps, is sales reps really you'd use the term conversion copywriter, or I saw that somewhere on your site, that's really describes what a sales rep has to be these days, is they have to really be focused on the words they use to be able to convert interest into qualification and get people into a buying process that results in an order. And so what tips would you give sales reps to say, how do we more formally A/B test, the words we use to approach prospects?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to see what kind of reaction. I mean, if you've been using the same presentation forever and you're getting certain level of results, try tweaking just individual pieces of it. Maybe ask a question in a little bit different way. That's something that I've played with a lot in our outbound is what can we change that's very small that we can measure in that conversation. And it's just leading again with the value. If we lead with the value first, it opens up and really the sales conversation from that point isn't so much about how you say things. I'm not the greatest salesperson in the world, but I've been able to get pretty solid results because I'm leading from a place of giving first, and then it just warms up that relationship.
So maybe you are the world's greatest salesperson.
Well, I don't know about that, but I've come a long way.
Right. Well, I mean, it's people have these images in their mind of what a great salesperson is, and it's like, yeah, actually, if you're being really effective, there's no model, there's no stereotype. It's what works, right, based on your results. Yeah. So when people come to a website, I mean, I saw an article that's talking about sort of 5 keys to move people through the process, and the first one is, you're trying to get people you're trying to engage them up front. And we just sort of talked about that. How do you engage? How do you trigger the curiosity of a prospect real quickly? And what do you find online? What's sort of the key to inspire people to take that next step?
It's benefits. That's the biggest thing it all comes down to. And the psychological aspect of it is people only buy or take action for 2 reasons, and that is to avoid pain or gain pleasure. I mean, obviously, it's weighed heavily towards the avoid pain side because not everybody can afford these luxury items, that it helps with that pleasure senses, but you just got to really hone in on exactly what their pain points are and how your problem or your solution can solve it. Your product, your service, it doesn't matter what you're selling. It's all the core fundamentals. And to grab that attention it always starts back with a headline, and then you lead with benefits, and don't overly explain your benefits.
Meaning?
A lot of people think that they need these long paragraphs of explaining exactly what they do and how it's going to benefit them. I find that it's beneficial just to go out and list a few bullet points, exactly what we can do and how it's going to benefit you. And a lot of companies that I see, particularly like in software as a service, I know that's heavy on, the sales side. They've got a lot of reps. We've got one software as a service company that's got over 80 account executives.
Right.
And we just lead with those short little benefits. And a lot of companies will lead with the features. It's like, look, here's how great we are, but it doesn't tie back to that pain point of exactly what it's going to do for them and why that feature is actually relevant.
Yeah, it seems like and I believe that if you go too deep, too fast, is you begin to lose the customer. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to, again, have a little bit of mystery in terms of what the next steps are going to be and what they're going to continue to learn as they go through the process.
And to get people into that next step, I find it isn't just so much to have like a form on your site. It's you got to tell them what to do next.
Which is true in sales, right? I mean, you have to be very explicit about what the expectations are, the steps the customer is going to take in response or in exchange for having received something of value from you.
Yeah, and I never leave a phone conversation without trying to book the next appointment.
Oh, yeah.
Whether that be to review a proposal or any situation, I give them that call to action. It's like, okay, what's your Wednesday look like?
Right. And now the other thing that's really key is, we start talking about building trust and so on. This seems to be an area that's really problematic for salespeople, and you talk about it in the content on your site, which I think is probably problematic for copywriters as well, is using the language of the customer. Talk in the language of the customer. Make sure the customer understands that you have some experience, some domain expertise, some business acumen, if you will, about the challenges that they face.
Yeah, and we use that. We use a lot of case studies in that example, where say we've got an e-commerce store or a software as a service company, and we've done work on previous software as a service company landing pages. We'll use those kind of specific examples. It's like, okay, if we change this, we've seen an average of about 80% increase. Are you guys experiencing that type of problem with your site? And it just ties it back every time I ask the question. Then I'll tie it back when I give the benefit. I'll tie it back to exactly in their language and specific to their site, exactly how it could benefit them, and ask them if that would be of a benefit.
Yeah, and one of the real key points you're just talking about too, it's sort of a sub point that you had, is you talked about 80% of the time that you've got data, and the problem still with sales that I'm trying to work with people through this podcast and other venues on is we have a lot of data coming into sales, but one of the points we're not doing is we're not keeping data on individual practices and results of sales reps in terms of, I use this verbiage or this wording in talking to 5 prospects today, and I'm going to track how that ultimately resulted in an outcome. And then I'm going to record that. But right now it's all anecdotal. Yep. And when you can't leave it as anecdotal, if we really want to see improvements in productivity and sales reps being more productive for the amount of time they're spending, is they have to start tracking this just like you guys do online. And the conversion experts is, I said these things, I'm going to track this throughout the sales process and see how that ultimately results in the outcome or doesn't, and then tweak it. But actually keep the data.
Absolutely. I mean, if you don't know your data, even it's a little bit tougher to track, obviously, when you're having one-on-one conversations or even group conversations. But there is, like you said, you break it down. If you have a dozen sales calls this week, split it up into 2, 3, 4, 5 at a time, and just see kind of what that situation. Maybe you start with a different opener. Maybe you ask for the sale a little bit different, and just test and see how that affects it. And it's the same thing with online. Yeah,
and there are tools that are coming. They're available, ExecVision.io, Spearfish, and others that enable you to record sales calls, that you can transcribe them. You can start tracking this information. And as sales reps, you really need to be thinking about it at a really finite level. It's not just your process. It's not how you dress. It's not necessarily even specific value proposition, but you have to track the words that you use and the impact they have.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to track everything and just try to be better. I mean, one of our mantras at our company is continuous improvement daily. We try to be better than we were yesterday, and whether that's sales calls or outbound efforts, working with clients, we try to just see how we can do it better than the previous day. And we've done a ton of testing on the outbound side and creating engagement. I mean, before we came online, we were talking briefly, and I mean, we've sent probably, 60,000 plus emails in the last 12 months, and just tracking exactly what's the most effective. And, we were seeing slight improvements here and there, and then we'd keep testing, and we'd hire a consultant to help us with our outbound efforts and test their things. We'd read a book on it, test that thing, and we'd measure every single email. And then we finally came up with a formula of exactly which emails at which time work the most effectively.
Yeah, and you're able to do that with your outbound sales calls, whether it's a voice call, as you said, whether it's an email that's part of your cadence for your outreach. All that stuff can be tracked and improved, and you really need to do that because the difference between winning and losing these days is so slight, especially as markets become more commoditized, products become quickly commoditized, services become quickly commoditized. How are you setting yourself apart from the other guy? Well, as I like to say, you only have to be 1% better to win. And that could be in the quality of your outreach.
Mm-hmm. And what really started it for us is we went from 2 to 3% response rate to 25%.
Wow.
On our outbound effort, just by tweaking it. And now it's settled back in to we're about 13.5% response rate on. I mean, we send out 25 emails. We send them in small batches. Some people might think you need to spread a wide net. We started out doing that because we really didn't know what we were doing on the outbound side. And we narrowed it down to small batches, very personal. And we send out 25 emails and we're going to get 3 to 5 presentations out of it.
Yeah, excellent. That's good. Well, you guys can do my email. So we're going to take a short break and we'll come back again with my guest, Justin Christianson. When we come back, we'll talk about value propositions. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. All right, we're back with my guest, Justin Christianson of Conversion Fanatics. We've been talking about ways you can learn from your direct selling through what happens and the techniques that they use for online marketing and conversion optimization. So now we'll talk a little bit about value propositions. Very problematic for lots of salespeople. I mean, this encapsulating the value of what they do in a very succinct way that engages the customer, inspires them to take the next step, starts to build some trust seems to be one of the most problematic areas. So what are some of the specific components that a value proposition needs to have? I mean, one I saw that Eric Crowley's reading talk about, you have to make specific claims, but they can't be these traditional sort of high quality.
Yeah, I mean, with the USP, I think it comes down to, I hate to beat the dead horse here, but it does come down to the benefit again, and then figuring out a way that you are different. Your chances are you're not the only one in your market. You're probably not selling some, blue ocean type product. So you need to figure out exactly how you're different and then present that in a way that's quick and easily digestible for your prospects.
So give some tips from the way that you write copy is if you are sort of, what's that? Most people are in markets where they're virtually indistinguishable from their competitors in terms of what they bring to the prospect, in terms of features and benefits and so on. So where do you look at that point then to find differentiators?
Like one selling proposition, I mean, we're definitely not the only conversion rate company out there. And one way that we set ourselves apart is communication. So meaning that we've heard so many horror stories from people saying, well, great, you're going to sign up, 2 hours before our meeting, you're going to have a report for me. We're going to talk about some ideas, and then I'm not going to hear from you again for 2 weeks. They've been burned so many times. So we made it a point that we're going to be extremely proactive on our communication. You're always going to know, actually overly obnoxious in terms of our communication with our clients, because we want them to know what's going on at every step of the way. And that's served us really well, and it's been a big selling point for us.
So how do you market that though? How do you sell that idea that we are more, when you come with us, we're going to provide a higher level of customer service after the sale? How are you communicating that before the sale as a value proposition or an element of your value proposition?
I really tie it down to what our process is. So a lot of companies or a lot of people in our space were used to it taken a month before they start seeing any action. So we sell it in a way that we're going to do our basic analysis, and our goal is to have your first test up and running within the first 2 weeks. So we tell them that, immediately after we sign this agreement, we're going to do an intro. We're going to do everything we need to do. We're going to brief the team, get everybody up to speed, and then we're going to schedule your kickoff call. And that kickoff call takes place within 2 days. So we just try to speed up the process and get kind of ingrained into their processes as quickly as possible. And we communicate it in that fact that, we're going to have a weekly meeting on the phone. And then we're going to tell you up to date with this certain platform. We use Basecamp as our tool to communicate, but we tell them exactly what's going to happen. And then we make sure on that kickoff call, it's a warm handoff. Everybody knows the objectives. Everybody gets to know each other. And then we try to prove it to them within the first week that here's what our communication looks like. But in communicating it, we just tell them, okay, we're going to have a weekly meeting, at least to start, at least for the first month, via phone. And we tell them what goes on those calls. And then we tell them how we communicate via email. So like, we're always available. If you have questions, we strive to get back to you same day or within 24 hours.
Right.
On all the communication. And we tell them that. I just flat out tell people when I'm talking to them, say, I don't ever want you to come to us and say, hey, where are things at in the process? I want you to know before you even come to us.
Well, and really what you're doing here, and maybe to put it back into sales speak, is that when you have a value proposition, in order to differentiate your value, is you need to quantify the value. So you've quantified it by explicating in pretty clear detail what your process is that's going to provide a great level of customer support for them after the fact.
Yes.
And so from a salesperson's perspective, what you have to really think about is how do I quantify the value? Because everybody has a value proposition. But the difference is, how do you make that real to the prospect? How do you make that real to the buyer? And it's quantification. You got to relate it to something that's tangible to them that they're going to receive, that they can count, right? It's either they're counting time, they're counting money, they're counting something that value is relating to.
Yeah, you've always got to tie it back, and it comes down again to the benefit. They've got their benefit, and that's their reason why. And I know you probably know this, but money is usually never the factor at the end of the day.
Exactly.
So it comes down, yeah.
Yeah, it comes down to time, as you said. When you're talking about your process, what they're deriving from that is you talk about your process of saying, with your process, that means we're going to get the benefit from what you promised more quickly than other companies because they're going to get implemented. B, we're not going to spend as much time wondering what's happening because you're going to keep us in the loop at all times and communicate with us what the results are. So for them, it all comes down to time and reliability and the ultimate achievement of the goal that they were set out to achieve when they were evaluating your product and service. So you've really,
that's really all it comes down to, is then that helps build the trust factor too. And we tell people that we're going to take care of 98% of your heavy lifting, because one of the biggest problems is like, we don't have bandwidth. We know we need to be testing, but we just don't have bandwidth. So we help solve that problem we've brought on, team members in different areas to help solve that problem. So we take care of the majority of the heavy lifting so they can do what's more important. Yeah. Rather than focusing on their tests. And we try to convey that benefit to them there too. And that helps build that level of trust as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great lesson again for sellers is with your value proposition, you have to state the value, but you got to quantify it in a way that's meaningful to the customer. Otherwise, it's just an empty statement that has no value.
Yeah. That's why I say the features, always support it with benefit, or benefit and then support it with the feature. Why is that relevant? And that comes down to pretty much every touch point in the sales process, whether it's online or off. Okay, well, great. Well, we're going to move on to the last segment of the show. And I've got standard questions I pose to guests. They're always sort of fun to hear the answer. All right, so here, first one is a hypothetical scenario I pose to all my guests. You've been hired as a new sales leader at a company whose sales have stalled out, desperately need to be turned around. What two things would you do your first week on the job that would have the biggest impact? Find a better differentiator in how we can position the product, and actually test the messaging would probably be my thing. That's my analytical mind, is figuring out where people are falling off and then test to try to increase that engagement. Okay. Good. Makes sense. All right. Rapid fire question. Give me one word answers, or you can elaborate if you wish. First one is, when you're selling personally, what's your most powerful sales attribute? Fun. I love it. Great answer. So name one tool you use for managing your own sales for your own company that you can't live without. Sales Loft.
Okay, so you use the Cadence product?
Yep.
Excellent. Who's your sales role model?
Oh, I read a ton of books. I like The Hustle from Grant Cardone.
Okay.
Recently, I mean, some people love him or hate him, but I just like his drive and determination.
Okay. Is there any other book that you recommend that salespeople read about conversion or engaging interested prospects?
The Greatest Salesman in the World is a great book that I've read. From the guy who Guinness Book of World Records for the most retail car sales. Can't remember his name, but it was a fantastic book.
All right, we'll find the author and we'll put that on the website. Greatest salesman in the world. All right, toughest question at all. What's on your playlist these days?
My playlist?
You're Music Central. You gotta have music.
Well, I am, and I'm a musician too. So I listen to a lot of different things. This morning I was listening to the new version of Sound of Silence by Disturbed.
Oh,
the remake, the cover of it.
I'll have to listen to that.
It's actually a fantastic track.
All right. As soon as we're hanging up, I'm listening to that. All right. So what's the first sales activity you do every day?
Check my stats.
And last question is, what's the one question you get asked most frequently by your customers?
Price.
What's your answer to the price question?
It says it depends on the level of engagement, and then I try to tie it back into the actual pain points and their specific needs.
Okay. To the ROI that they're going to get.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Justin, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's been a great conversation. My guest, Justin Christianson, tell people how they can find out more about you.
Find out anything about me at conversionfanatics.com or find me on social at Clixo, CLYXO.com/Justin Christianson.
And is there someplace they can go and hear your music?
I've got a few tracks on YouTube, but it's kind of past. We've got a few covers on YouTube. You could probably find me if you search for me. We're just me playing guitar, but and we had an album out when I was in a band back in my 20s, but it's long past. I don't know if that's even online anymore.
No band in your future?
No, I still play a little bit. We might do some more acoustic stuff here coming up, but
all right. So if you want to find them online on YouTube. Well, Justin, again, thanks for being on the show. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And subscribing to this podcast is an easy way to do that, because then you make sure you don't miss any of the valuable conversations we have with top business experts like our guest today, Justin Christianson, who share their expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us. And until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.